Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, July 8th. Low pressure has been sitting over the southeast U.S. during the past couple of days in a very moist air mass that has resulted in some heavy rainfall in the deep south over the past couple of days. That low pressure area will make a move to the north and east over the next 24 to 48 hours or so, likely reaching a position over or just to the east of the mid-Atlantic coastline by about Friday. And it looks like there can be some heavy rainfall associated with that tropical or perhaps a subtropical low at the end of the work week here in the Mid-Atlantic region, at least along and to the east of Route I-95. It's a little early to say if that heavy rainfall will affect, let's say, the D.C. metro region, but Philly, New York City, New Jersey, certainly heavy rainfall is on the table. Very well could become a named tropical system also if this system goes out over the warm waters of the western Atlantic and spends several hours, as is likely to be the case. It very well could intensify and become a named tropical system by the National Hurricane Center. Whether or not it becomes a named storm, again, heavy rain is on the table for coastal Mid-Atlantic region in the Friday time period, maybe even all the way up along eastern New England in the Friday night, Saturday time period. And the departure of this tropical or subtropical low will not be the end of the wet weather pattern for the eastern U.S. An impressive upper-level trough will push into the eastern states later in the weekend into the first half of next week, continuing the threat for showers and thunderstorms. Here's an infrared look at this morning's situation across the southern U.S. All kinds of moisture resides this morning from Texas all the way to the southwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean. Very impressive thunderstorms flaring up this morning over the southwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean. There is a surface low pressure area right now over eastern South Carolina, and again it looks like it'll make a move to the north and east over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Once it reaches the warm waters of the western Atlantic, very well could become a named tropical system as it undergoes some intensification. But all kinds of moisture just sitting there over the southern part of the U.S. And again, low pressure will pull out of this region and move to the northeast and right up along the mid-Atlantic coastline by later in the week. Well, here's a look at the current surface map. And again, low pressure sitting over South Carolina this morning. It really has been relatively stationary over the past couple of days, moved from central Georgia to South Carolina in the last 24 hours or so. There's been a stalled out frontal boundary zone in this region and just tremendous moisture this morning all across the deep south, including some heavy rainfall, some patchy dense fog. Places like northern Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama has a very thick fog this morning. This low pressure system will move towards the Carolina coastline and then likely right up along the mid-Atlantic coastline. Whether it's immediately on top of the coastline or just to the east, a little early to say, but once it gets out over the warm waters of the western Atlantic, it could intensify enough to become a named tropical system. Whether or not it becomes a named system, there is heavy rainfall on the table for the end of the work week, let's say the Friday time period, places like New York City, New Jersey, maybe into southeastern Pennsylvania, in D.C. or just to the east of D.C., Delmarva Peninsula, this region right here around the late Thursday night, Friday night time frame. Strong rip currents are likely to develop over the ocean as this system intensifies, and again it may become a named tropical system. After that, likely rides up along eastern New England, spreading some heavy rainfall across the eastern part of New England Friday night, Saturday time frame. And again, that will not be the end of the wet weather pattern for the eastern third of the nation. A very impressive upper level trough will actually build in the eastern U.S. by the latter part of the weekend into the early part of next week, continuing the threat for some significant rainfall in the eastern third of the nation. Well, you can bet the National Hurricane Center is closely monitoring this feature right here. It has a decent chance of moving out over the warm waters of the western Atlantic and becoming a named tropical storm after further intensification. Here is the surface low positioning as we begin the day here on Wednesday. Almost over water already, but it'll move out over the warm waters of the western Atlantic over the next 24 hours or so, and then kind of take a turn more to the north than northeast. And again, could be a tropical storm, but whether it reaches tropical storm status or not, there is heavy rainfall on the table for the eastern mid-Atlantic region, and then all the way up along the New England coastline at the end of the work week. Rip currents should develop, and there certainly will be gusty winds to closely monitor also in the coastal part of the mid-Atlantic and the eastern part of New England. Again, we're talking late Thursday night, Friday night into the day on Saturday. Eventually that moves on out of here, and a vigorous wave of energy in the upper part of the atmosphere will drop southeastward across the Great Lakes and help to form a deep trough in the eastern U.S. by the end of the weekend and the early part of next week, and that certainly will keep it quite active, quite unsettled. Chance for more significant rainfall in the eastern third of the nation. Of course, we've had some tremendous rain over the past few days. Just the night before last, there were as much as 4 to 8 inches of rain that fell just to the south and east of the D.C. metro region. The entire mid-Atlantic region, at least the eastern half of the mid-Atlantic region, got downpours a couple of nights ago, and the grounds are very well saturated, so that's why we have to closely monitor this potential heavy rain event at the end of the work week. Well, let's take a look at last night's 6Z run of the GFS, the operational run here, and still some questions have to be answered here. Exactly the positioning of this low by the time we get to Friday. It should be right along the New Jersey coastline or just to the east of there. Here's the positioning right now, surface low, and we saw a moment ago the infrared satellite imagery loop showed some very active thunderstorm right off the southeastern U.S. coastline. Very humid air mass extends all the way from Texas to the southwestern Atlantic. Let's now move forward here in time and watch what happens here. This is by this afternoon and this evening. There will be scattered showers and thunderstorms in the mid-Atlantic region, not nearly as widespread or as intense as 2 nights ago, but nonetheless, there can be showers and thunderstorms later today into tonight. Then we move into the day on Thursday. Thursday morning, low pressure moves to right over the Outer Banks here, and again, a lot of moisture on its east side here, but it's in this position here where it's just about over the warm waters of the western Atlantic. Should undergo some intensification again. Better than even chance that this develops enough to become a named tropical storm by the time we get to Friday. And here we go by Thursday night and then into Friday morning, sitting right here off the Delmarva Peninsula. Again, give or take a few miles. It could be right over the coastline or just to the east of there. Some heavy rainfall on the table for New Jersey, for New York City, maybe even back into Philadelphia. A little bit less of a chance in D.C., but still on the table here, just because that's a little bit farther inland, but maybe just to the east of D.C., some decent rainfall on the table. Notice the isobar pattern starting to basically tighten up here with the intensification of this system. Gusty winds will be the result, and rip currents are quite likely to form over the in the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. Here we go by Friday afternoon. Significant rain all the way into eastern part of Pennsylvania. Again, D.C. may be just too far to the south and west of this low pressure area to experience the heavy rainfalls. Too early to write it off though, but from Philly to New York City all the way throughout New Jersey, watch out for the potential of heavy rain. Again, the grounds are very well saturated. Then it'll ride up to the north and east. By the time we get into Saturday, it produces some heavy rainfall up across New England, especially eastern New England, probably in the Friday night, Saturday time frame. And again, that's not the end of the weather pattern. We have a very impressive wave that'll drop southeastward over the Great Lakes region by the second half of the weekend, and it helps to carve out a deep upper level trough in the eastern U.S. by the time we get to the early part of next week, and that will continue the active, unsettled, wet weather pattern into next week for the eastern third of the nation. So tropical or subtropical low likely to be sitting right over or just to the east of the mid-Atlantic coastline by midday on Friday. Could intensify enough to become a named tropical storm. Whether or not it reaches that status, there is a chance for some heavy rainfall on Friday, especially in the eastern part of the mid-Atlantic region. Rip currents in the ocean and strong gusty winds as well. So we'll monitor this closely over the next couple of days here at PerspectaWeather.com. That's it for now. I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.